Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Interact podcast. My name is Josh Haynam. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Interact. And today I am joined by Jen Bazwick. Jen is the founder of the Intuitive Nutritionist and has built a super cool quiz that I really enjoy, just from like the construction of it and how it's framed and the whole process of it. So I wanted to invite Jen on to talk about that. So thanks for being here, Jen. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me, Josh. It's honestly super exciting to even be here because I feel like past me, who is like, I want to make a quiz. I don't know how to make a quiz, but I want that to be a thing, would be like, what? How are we like, here talking about its success now? So, yeah, this is really cool. Thank you for inviting me on the podcast.
That's really cool. And that's that's part of the ethos of what we really enjoy at Interact is following those trajectories where it's like you start in one place and then you are in a different place and it's a better place. And I think that's super cool. So take us back to that beginning where you were making the quiz. At what point in your business was that? What was the reason? Like, why were people asking you about the topic, or where did it come from?
Yeah, great question. So, I'd say around the time where I thought I wanted to make a quiz was probably almost like somewhere between 1 and 2 years into running my business. So I had already started coaching and offering programs and things like that, and had quite some time like working with folks, hearing their struggles, really getting to know my people a lot better. My business is actually something that I struggled with before, and that's kind of what it's founded on. And in terms of helping people improve their relationships with food, more specifically in like binge eating and overeating, like I have my own past in that too, but it really got to in those, I guess, couple years before I started the quiz, really understand other people as well, and really building my own frameworks and things like that through working with folks and like starting a coaching business from the ground up, really. So I think it was around, yeah, somewhere between after a year, let's say like a year and a half, maybe. And I was, as we do in marketing as business owners, we know like having some kind of lead magnet or free something is always a great way of capturing leads and warming people up and all those wonderful things that it can do. And I had at the time, I think it was like a free mindful eating guide. Like that's what I started with. And I was like, you know what? I could do better. This could be better. And what could it be? And I think hearing about the idea of a quiz, and I think actually like chatted with, I don't know if it was you actually, Josh, maybe this is so many years ago now, but got in contact with someone from Interact and kind of like started brainstorming like, oh, could I like have a quiz in my business? Maybe, yeah, well, maybe that would be a great actual lead magnet. And then it kind of planted that seed of, okay, this would be actually really cool. I love taking quizzes myself out of just sheer curiosity, and it could really, help people. And I will say, like, from that point in time where I was like, yeah, I want to make a quiz, to when I actually made the quiz was actually quite a bit of time. I did like a lot of brainstorming and things like that. And I definitely would say some of my like perfectionism in those early years got in the way of me actually hitting publish or like putting it out there to the public with my quiz. So probably took me like an actual year to get things up and running and actually like finish it and put it out there. So yeah, and I think it really just came from a place of me feeling like it would be fun to have a quiz as a lead magnet, and also just a great way to capture people and help them in a more specific way. Because I think like what I really liked when I first learned about quizzes and how they're made and what way that could happen, I really resonated with the idea of a personality quiz and that style of being able to give someone of like, oh, hey, look, based on your results, this is the most like you, and here's why, and here's how that can help you. So I knew I wanted to go that route, but in the beginning, I also was definitely not clear on what that was going to look like or how I was going to do that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think that's like so similar to a lot of what I hear, but you did follow through, which a lot of
Yes.
people get stuck. on the perfectionism, I think, in particular, and it never gets out the door. So kudos for doing that. Now I'll have to look at my email to see if we did chat back in the day,
Yeah,
or if it's someone
right?
on the
I know,
team
I'm
over
like,
here.
"Was it?" It might
Yeah.
have been.
We all kind of have like group mind over here. There's a number of us that talk to customers when they're thinking about ideas, and sometimes the customer will be like, "Oh, I talked to you," and it's like, "No, I talked to you," and then everyone has the same like
For sure.
mentality. So it's funny. It's funny. But how did you do that brainstorming process? Because I think that's
Mhm,
where a lot of people uh, get stuck before they even start. Is just like, how do you go about brainstorming? And I think a lot of people are similar to you. I'm also this way where it's like you do want it to be something that's like fun and personal, but
mhm.
then you also want it to be like real to the business. So what was your process like for doing that?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the beginning, it was a lot of just brainstorming. And I will say that I know I didn't land on the idea that the quiz is now right away. Like I had a lot of other ideas first. And I think that brainstorming kind of came from probably knowing like I wanted to do a personality quiz and what could that look like? Like what kinds of ways that I tease out like what my audience is struggling with and what I help them with into personality buckets. And I think I was trying to even look back because I know in my in my account I have some like random drafts that I was playing with right in the beginning. And I think something was about mindful eating, and another thing was like, how should you get started with intuitive eating or things like that, that were just like, I guess, almost more vague in a way that, but those were like the first iterations or ideas that I was having. And then I got more granular, I guess, if we want to call it that, of just really brainstorming how I could be more specific, and really honing things in further. And I think it like dawned on me that I was like, well, duh, like since I really help people with like that out of control eating in the work that I do and my method that I help my clients and members and everything with, there are three root causes of like binge eating and overeating. And those are the components of my method that I teach people. So I'm like, okay, well, why couldn't those be, the three personalities, quote unquote, that my quiz is leading to? And then through that, people are uncovering what their biggest root cause is behind binge eating. So it just like, it was almost like a light bulb went off in my head that I was like, well, duh, that would be the best option because it leads so well into one, helping people get clarity on what their biggest struggle is or their biggest block to actually overcoming what they want to overcome is. And it also lends right into the method that I teach people so they get a taste of, how I do things and the component that, their result relates to and the whole ecosystem of that. So when that idea came up, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm going to run with. So that's what I ended up running with, is doing the three personalities that my quiz leads to as those three root causes of, well, their physical restriction, unmet emotional needs, and mental deprivation being like three main root causes of binge eating and overeating and that out of control eating that my clients struggle with. And yeah, again, those lend to my method that I teach people. So yeah, that's kind of what I ended up landing on, but I definitely didn't get there right out the gate. It definitely took a lot of brainstorming and seeing things through or how it could play out. And eventually it just kind of happened and came together.
So perfect, because I hear that story over and over again, and there's often like these things that are in your business that are different aspects of human beings, and your work ties into which type somebody is, and people are all unique but also similar in some ways, and so you can have these groupings, right?
Mhm.
And I think what you just said like resonates with me a lot too, where it's like you just kind of keep going and then it sort of falls into place, which I guess it's kind of like Malcolm Gladwell's famous for that, right? It's like the 10,000 hours. It's just like there's no real magic. You just kind of figure it out over time. I would imagine that that also was like collaborative with your clients. Like you were talking to clients all along the way and just kind of maybe doing some mental organizing even subconsciously as you were doing all that.
Yeah, for sure. I think like really like predating even this being an idea for the quiz was, I guess, it being my quote unquote method that I use in my business, which I didn't have from the start, right? Like that method really came together based on, yes, conversations with clients or conversations on discovery calls of what people were struggling with most. And even just like the expertise of actually understanding the nuances of binge eating and overeating and seeing that from a like professional lens as well, like really kind of combining all that together to create what was my method. That, yes, definitely was informed by everything, by my clients, by people in my audience, by my own past experiences, by my professional trainings, right? Like everything kind of came together to create that method that then just naturally lended into being part of the quiz. But I think really the quiz in the way that it is, like the way that I frame questions or the answers to those questions that people are choosing, and um, how to kind of get there. Like, yeah, I definitely was thinking of my clients of, okay, if I talk to someone and they were presenting with, more so one of these three buckets, like I honestly do like to say, like most people are going to hit each of them, right, in their journey. But it's like, which one is the sticky point and which one are you getting tripped up on most, right? Like, what's that biggest roadblock for whatever specific individual? So, kind of thinking of those people while I was putting together the results for the quiz and like what characteristics do those people have? What are their specific pain points? What thoughts do they have? Like, what are they saying out loud to
Mm.
me about their struggles and what they're getting tripped up on? And really being able to use, clients, people I'm chatting with, all of that different type of market research you can do to inform the language that I was using in the quiz was honestly, I think, or has been what has made it so successful and relatable for people to get tailored answers that they actually resonate with.
Yeah, that's a new entry to the results. What you just said about their thoughts. I haven't heard
Mhm.
that one before, but that's really good. Like if you can, yeah, if you can get into the internal dialogue of somebody and like this, you might be thinking about this. You might be. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
How how do you go about wording the like especially the results at the end given the sensitivity of the topic? Because
Mhm.
I think it's because quizzes are like a one-on-one medium. We
Mhm.
see a lot of sensitive topics, like very deeply personal stuff, um, you know, potentially like emotional or, heavy or whatever. Um, so how did you go about talking to people in a way that was, respectful and honoring of like the sensitivity?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that goes throughout the entire quiz of like even the way I structured questions and the potential options for answers, and really trying to keep it as lighthearted as I can as possible. And I do that throughout, my copy and marketing as a whole. But because, yeah, you're right, like struggling with binge eating and overeating and all of these out of control feelings with food is already filled with so much shame that people are like feeling so awful about themselves and like they're broken, that I definitely, especially because the quiz is like pointing at a root cause, I didn't want it to feel like, hey, this is what's wrong with you, right? Like that is the last thing that I wanted this to be like, because that's not even true. Like I tell people time and time again, just generally, and people that I work with, like, you're not broken. there's just a lot of things that have happened and you've learned or picked up over the course of your life that has led you here. And we just need to unlearn those things to, get back to your authenticity and being able to eat in a way that supports you best instead of having all these layers of things that are making you feel icky about food. But
Mm.
yeah, really, I didn't want there to be any elements of shame. I wanted to keep it as lighthearted as possible. And I think, doing that in many different ways of trying to keep the questions like, yeah, fun if I could. Like, I think the second question in my quiz has literally nothing to do with the results or anything. It's just, I forget exactly the wording, but it's something like, um, what kind of food are you, like based on your personality? And it's like a cookie, like if you're like a big sweetheart and you love to like give hugs or something and they're like gifts of cookies, or there's like a gift of chips or something. It's just totally lighthearted, has nothing to do with anything, but really just having people be like, oh, this is more fun than intimidating, kind of like switching a little bit of the feel and vibe to it. I use GIFs in there as much as I can, emojis, even just trying to make it relatable. Like there's one question I have of like, oh, it's the end of a stressful work day. You get home, what happens next? And the GIF before the answers is like this lady like sitting down on a couch and like taking her bra off at the end of the day. Like, it's just trying to make it as fun and playful as I could throughout the quiz. I think helps. And then, especially in the positioning of the results, is more so not like you're doing this, so that's causing your problems, but like, here's how to look at this thing that you might be struggling with from the position that like it's not your fault. And here's why you're struggling with it because diet culture taught you, or, XYZ, like really kind of showing them that they're not alone. And like I really understand what they're feeling and why they're feeling it and how it's not their fault, and providing that like clear, here's your direction from here. So it's more empowering than almost like pointing fingers, right? Because I feel like you
Mm.
could potentially land in that direction of pointing fingers if you're doing a, I guess, pain point kind of focused quiz.
Yeah, yeah. I like a few of the things that you had in there. The first one, this kind of picture that you painted of, it's almost like restorative is the word that comes to mind,
Mhm.
of here's the things that are causing, a disconnect, and we can work together to restore it rather than like, here's what's wrong. And the other thing that you pointed out about the questions, and honestly, I haven't heard anyone say that either, but that type of question that you talked about, I guess the best wording for it is maybe like a priming question, like, or I don't know, a connecting question. Like it has nothing to do with the results, but it also kind of does, because
Mhm.
if you didn't ask that question, I bet people would be more serious and maybe a little less honest with how they answer the questions. Maybe they would be a little edgy and like answer how they want to be versus how they actually are.
Mhm.
But by, getting more of a connection there, I bet people are much more honest with the rest of the quiz because they're like in a more comfortable state.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about that before. It's super interesting to hear it framed that way. I think
Mhm.
it's really smart. It's really smart.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. Can I ask how the quiz has been helpful in your business? Like as far
Mm.
as like actual impact? I mean, this all sounds awesome to me, but I'm like, we are both small business owners. We know you gotta help the bottom line. So like, how has it been a benefit to the actual business?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think, like, first of all, I mean, I just want to say thank you for your kind words about kind of putting this quiz together and making it happen in the way that it is. Um, I think people really like it too. Like, I do get a lot of good feedback about the quiz and people saying how much they like resonated with it and how helpful it was for them and all these kinds of things. And I think just hearing that alone makes it worth it, that people can, see more clarity about why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. And again, making them know that it's not their fault that they're feeling that way and there is a path forward. Right. So I think really the goal of it for me is to empower people and help them see whether they, purchase from me or not, or work with me or not. Just the fact that if this could empower someone to feel like they have hope on a journey that otherwise a lot of people feel stuck and like they can't overcome, then I'm doing my job and that quiz is doing its job. So I, appreciate all the kind words and DMs or things that I get about the quiz here and there. And if we're talking more like, business strategy and how that's looked and how this kind of funnels into my business, it's definitely evolved over the years because the quiz has, how old is it now? I don't know, 3, 4 years ish. Old. I forget exactly the date that I published the quiz, but something like that. And it has, I have it set up in a way that it kind of has a nurture sequence on the back end. So they get their results first and foremost. I actually give them like a little bit of like a bonus video from me explaining the results more in the second email and continue to do like nurture stuff. And then that does lead into like, if you want more, essentially, here's how you can do that. And it turning into, I guess, more of a sales sequence later on. I've played around with that part over the years, and I'm still always playing around with that and seeing how that can improve and become better. It's led into people joining my group program that I had years ago, and now it's led into my membership program that I have now, and people joining. So, like, I quite literally can see who has taken the quiz, and then from there signed up for whatever it was that they signed up for. And I've kind of gotten into, in some seasons of this, I've had like the very honed in tracking and like tagging and doing all that. In some seasons I also haven't. So sometimes people will surprise me and be like, oh, I took the quiz, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize you were someone that was here from the quiz. So yeah, I think there's definitely ways that I can measure its impact, and it has led to sales and clients. And even, for example, on the back end, usually I'm leading to not my one-on-one coaching. Like, I haven't tied the quiz to that. It's more so been either like the group program that was a few years ago, and now my membership, or something that is a little bit of a smaller scale thing. But I have people who become one-on-one clients after they take the quiz too, not in the fact that it's set up in the email funnel that way, but the fact that they took the quiz, they resonated. Now they're in my ecosystem. Now they want to work with me. So totally depends. And I think some of the ways that it, leads to sales or business outcomes are direct, and other ways it's indirect. So yeah, it has been great, and I would highly recommend having a quiz if you could within your business. It's been something, or it has been, I can say hands down, been the biggest driver of growing my email list than anything else. So yeah.
It's cool. Well, I appreciate those kind words. That's nice of you. It's cool to hear the different ways that it builds like human connection with people. Whether it's through a group or you eventually are talking one on one or whatever the channel is. I think it's really nice. It's like just kind of nice in general, like to be able to have something that has more of that connective power. Marketing, at least in my view, can be so cold sometimes, and it's nice to have that more individualized, personalized experience. Um, I was curious to kind of hear, like, I know you kind of alluded to how you started or why you started the business, but how did you start the business? Like, what's a bit of the story on like how you actually got this thing off the ground? Because it's so hard. So like, how did that go?
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, like business genesis. How long do we have
I
to
know,
just
right? I'm with you on that.
yeah, I think you know what? I always say like my business actually started on accident. Which I know is not that relatable for a lot of people, but how it kind of went was that when I was still wrapping up my master's program, actually, in nutrition and becoming a registered dietitian, I really knew that after I was done, I wanted to have my own business. Like I knew that for years before. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was like a teenager. So I knew that. And while I was in my master's, I was like, why not start my website, my blog now? Like, why not just start that? I was posting on Instagram, just kind of like a hobby. It wasn't anything like I didn't start an Instagram page for the sake of business. I just started it from more of like a passion place and was not definitely not taking it seriously. It was just whatever I kind of felt like. That was how it was. And from there, I was like, well, why don't I just create my website and a blog? And I knew enough from like, I listened to Jenna Kutcher actually a lot
Hmm.
with my love for entrepreneurship and knowing that I wanted to do that. So, from learning from her and other people, you know, in the online space at that time, I knew having a freebie was a good thing to have and building an email list was a good thing to do. So, I started that before I actually was offering any services at all. So I started a blog, again, out of passion for intuitive eating. And my business actually started a little bit more generalized than it is now. So I just focused on intuitive eating as a whole, which now I'm kind of more niched into binge eating and overeating, but intuitive eating as a whole. And again, I had that mindful eating freebie that I mentioned. That was my first freebie. So I launched all that at the same time, like website, that freebie, and my email list on like Flowdesk, and just kind of like put all that out there all at the same time while there was literally no offering. It was like join my email list and get this freebie. That's it. You can kind of live in this ecosystem and be in my world. And I was doing a master's program at the time. So I didn't have time to do an offer anyways. Like doing the blog and everything was more than enough. Um, and then weirdly enough, I had someone, since I was running these things in my Instagram, I had someone reach out to me and be like, hey, do you offer intuitive eating coaching? And this is just so funny because I could go back and be like, yeah, this my first client's probably like, what? How did you just do that out of thin air? And I answered like, yes, I do, and just went for it. That was that. I had nothing planned, nothing in place. I was just like, okay, this person wants coaching from me. Let's do it. So I threw together something. I came up with like probably like the worst contract ever. Now that I look back, but at least I had a contract. And, you know, working with that first client of mine was honestly one of the most joyful experiences ever. She was great and taught me so much about what coaching would actually look like for me, how I could actually structure things, what was working for her best, and all of that. And I just kind of went for it and tried to not get in my own way and just showed up confidently, like I knew what I was doing. Mind you, I had training in intuitive eating, like I was a certified intuitive eating counselor. I knew what I was talking about, but I had never actually coached someone before. But you have to start somewhere. So that's why I mean, that's what I mean when I say this kind of all just happened by accident. Yeah.
That's, I think if you could do an entrepreneurship test in one question, you would just say, what would you do if you were an expert at something and someone just asked you one day if you have like a product or a service in that area? Would you say yes or no? And
Yeah, right.
the sign of an entrepreneur is you always say yes.
Yeah,
You're like, yeah, yeah, I have that. Now let
of
me
course.
figure it out. Let me figure it out.
Exactly.
Was so that they came from Instagram. So were people
Mhm.
finding you on Instagram or from like search traffic from your blog or both or?
Yeah, I'd say at the beginning, pretty well just Instagram.
Mhm.
It actually didn't take too long to see search traffic come through on the blog.
Hmm.
I also learned a few things about SEO and how to
Mhm.
actually optimize blogs for SEO. So I think that has now, like, some of those very first blog posts are still generating so much traffic to my website, and
Mm.
they're from like 6 years ago now.
Mm.
So yeah, like actually putting in the effort with SEO can pay off big time. But I would say in the beginning, yeah, mostly people from Instagram. And now that's definitely evolved over the years. With more now majority of my people coming into my world through my podcast. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it evolves over time. And even looking back, like I think when you're starting a business, you probably look at people who have like all these things and be like, ah, I gotta have like all the things, but really letting them naturally evolve over time and like what you can actually have the capacity for is, I think, really important. Because if I was doing all the things back then, I don't think I would have been doing anything well. I would have been burning myself out. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's super true. Especially anything marketing or content creation. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, if you think you're going to be on 5 platforms to start off and do any of them well, it's delusional. Like, there's just
Yeah.
not possible. And I like the point about it evolving too, because there's always different reasons for that. Maybe it's what the audience wants, maybe it's where people's attention is going, whatever it
Mhm.
is like adapting and evolving. Those are super good, like entrepreneurship lessons. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's
Yeah,
cool.
of course.
It's a cool story. As we kind of close up here, where can people go to take your quiz and then follow along with your work and find the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the quiz is if you go to theintuitivenutritionist.com/quiz. Um, Nice and simple. You can head there. You can actually take the quiz. And I actually have I don't know if you want to link this, Josh, but I have a
Mhm.
blog post explaining the quiz as well.
Oh, yeah.
So if that would be of interest to anyone,
It definitely will.
that also exists. So you could check both out. And then, yeah, my podcast is called the Intuitively You podcast, and you can find it really on all the major platforms that you like to listen to your podcasts on. And yeah, I'd just be happy to connect if anyone has any thoughts, questions, whatever from this. You can, message me on Instagram, and I'd love to, yeah, hear any thoughts.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jen. I appreciate you sharing both the business advice and also about the quiz.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Josh. It's been fun.